I tell you, you will not get bread that tastes this good at the grocery store. Like, I could eat this for breakfast, for lunch, and for dinner. What up? It's Kilowatt. So I've been trying to figure out ways to cut costs in our grocery bill overall. Something that has happened in our house when we buy bread is that we never go through it quick enough, and half the loaf goes bad and then we have to throw it out. And so really we're not getting the full value of the money we spent on buying that loaf of bread. My partner and I love making sandwiches, so we can't really go without not having bread. So one thing that I've done in the last few months is make my own bread at home. Now, you may be thinking to yourself,
well, gee, like, don't you have to use yeast? And doesn't that take like a bunch of hours to rise and stuff? And what if I F it up?
well, I had the same thoughts a long time ago. One day I was grocery shopping and I happened across these 2 large packages of yeast that were on a clearance rack in the middle of the aisle. And there were only 2 left and they were 50 cents each. So I snatched them up. So I spent $1 on all of this yeast. That was a few months ago, and ever since, like, I've been making a bread like once a week. It's become somewhat of an addiction. So I've really found that making bread at home myself has really helped in that area of cutting down costs and not wasting food. It saves me money. You know, when you go to the grocery store, you can buy a loaf of bread from, depending on where and what brand, anywhere from $1.50 to like $4.50 for some more fancy bread. It tastes 100 times better than anything you can find in the grocery store. And I guarantee once you try this, you will also agree and not go back. The options for the flavors you can put inside your bread is endless. You could put seeds in it, you could put nuts in it, you could put cheese in it, you could put chocolate in it, you could put cinnamon and brown sugar in it. So I'm gonna show you today why you should make your own bread at home and how you can do that with 3 easy ingredients. We'll also mention an optional piece of equipment, a cast iron Dutch oven. Now, this isn't mandatory for making bread, but I think it helps the process a lot more and helps give you a really nice, well-baked loaf of bread. For those of you who are interested, I think I got this for around 60 bucks on Amazon, and I looked around for a while and it was definitely the cheapest good quality that I could find. And what's really cool about it is that the lid also doubles as a cast iron skillet. So you can use the entire Dutch oven together like this with the lid, like for instance for baking their bread, or you can use it separately and take the lid and use it sort of as a skillet or a frying pan on your stovetop, or even place it on top of the Dutch oven this way and have the entire thing on your stovetop. You know, maybe you've got some stuff in the Dutch oven cooking, but then also the surface on top gets hot enough for you to do some frying on top. So you can kind of cook 2 things at once on one stovetop burner. So I found that this was an excellent deal that I found on Amazon. It was about 60 bucks. So for anyone who's interested in purchasing one of these for their bread making, I'll put the link down in the description and you guys can check that out. We're going to measure out 3 1/4 cups of flour. So I've got 2 here, 2 and 1 1/4. 2 teaspoons of our instant dry yeast. 1, 2. 2 teaspoons of our coarse salt. If you end up sprinkling a little more in there, no big deal. It's not going to make your loaf salty by any means. Okay. Take our whisk and give this a nice stir. 1 1/2 cups of cool water, And as we slowly pour this into the flour, we're gonna keep stirring. And then when this starts getting thick like this, we're gonna start using our hands. So you have to be prepared to get really dirty and in there. Just some of the sides there. So you can see that the dough is getting nice and uniform and sticky. That's what we want. It's not wet, but it's just a little bit sticky. You can see. This is sort of the texture we want. So after we've successfully mixed up all of our ingredients and we get the texture of dough that we want, we're gonna form it into a nice ball. And we're gonna set it down back into this bowl. You'll see that the dough that we rolled up into that nice ball and placed into the middle of the bowl is not that big. So you might be thinking like, gee, that's the loaf. Oh, you got some flour there. Anyways, the yeast will make it rise like 2 to 3 times its size. You're gonna be really surprised. So we're gonna let that sit. And in the meantime, I figured we'd go and sit down at the computer and see if we can figure out just how much money you save making your own bread at home versus buying it at the grocery store. Let's go. We're just gonna check out what's going on at Walmart, because Walmart tends to be just cheapest in general for grocery items. And while I wouldn't necessarily go there to buy fresh fruit or veggies or even meat, their prices on their dry goods are generally unmatched at any other grocery store or department store. First ingredient that we needed in our bread recipe is flour. So we'll just look up all the possible options for flour at Walmart and we'll see what we get for cost. So we just search flour. So we see $3.97 for whole wheat here, $3.97 for bread flour, so it's the same. But we're gonna go with this cost here of the $3.97 for 2.5 kilograms of bread flour and do some calculations. So if you recall, in our recipe we used 3¼ cups of bread flour. So this here is telling us that 1 cup of bread flour, this is perfect, equals 136 grams. Type in 136 grams times 3.25, so 0.25 cups of flour. And so that gives us 442 grams of flour that we use for one bread recipe. So we've got 2.5 kilograms, that's converted to 2,500 grams. So we're going to take 2,500 and divide it by 442 to see how many different recipes we can make with that one package. So we're going to do 2,500 divided by 442. So this gives us 5.656 bunch of decimals. So we'll round this and we can make 5.66 loaves of bread. So what this will also do, if we go back to the cost of the flour, $3.97. So we know now that with this cost, we can get this many loaves out of it, 5.66 rounded. So we're going to take the cost of the bag and divide it by this to see how much each loaf costs in terms of bread flour. So 5.66, okay. So we're going to do 3.97 divided by 5.66. And that gives us 0.701. So basically, this is 70 cents that it costs of bread flour per loaf of bread. So 70 cents. Okay, our next ingredient is salt. Table salt is the most common one that is found in households, so that's probably what you'll end up using. 67 cents of the great value iodized table salt for 1 kilogram of table salt. So we're gonna go with this cost. And it's nice here, you can also even option to use fine sea salt for a different flavor profile at no cost difference. So 1 kilogram of table salt converted to teaspoons equals 175.82 teaspoons. So we need 2 teaspoons for 1 recipe. So we'll go back and open up our calculator here. Just clear that. We're just gonna take this number here, 175.82, and divide that by 2. 87.91 bread recipes that we can use this package of table salt for. Then we go back to the cost of this table salt, 67 cents. We're going to take 67 cents and divide it by 87.91 to get how much 2 teaspoons of salt costs for the 1 recipe of the loaf of bread. Okay, 0.67 divided by 87.91. And there we go. We've got 0.0076 and a bunch of decimals. So essentially, in 2 decimal places, this is less than a cent per 2 teaspoons for our recipe. So we're just going to round that and say 0.008. Our last ingredient that we need is yeast. So we're looking for an instant or active dry yeast. We want that kind of yeast. So Walmart only has 4 options right now. So we're just going to go with the cheapest one here. So we've got $1.97 for 250 grams. So 1 teaspoon of active dry yeast converted to gram equals 2.83 grams. For our recipe, we need 2 teaspoons. We're going to multiply this number by 2 to see how much we need per recipe. So 2.83 times 2 equals 5.66 grams of active dry yeast per recipe. The package that we were looking at has 250, so we'll take 250 and divide it by 5.66. And so this gives us 44.17 rounded times that we can use that package of yeast for our bread recipes. So if we get 44 uses out of this package and it costs $1.97, we can take $1.97 and divide it by 44.17 to get our per use cost. And so we get 0.04 for a bunch of decimals. So essentially this is just 4 cents. And we'll open up our calculator and add this all together. So we've got 70 cents for flour plus 0.008, so less than a cent for salt, plus 4 cents for yeast. And this gives us 0.748, which rounded equals just 75 cents. So this is the cost of making a loaf of bread at home, and we'll just take a quick look as to how much it costs for, just buying bread at the store, buying bread from Walmart. So we see here for buying brand name bread such as Dempster's, we got $2.57 or $2.97. Villaggio is on sale for $2.77, still much more expensive. The great value, the cheapest brand we'll probably find here is $1.77, which is still more than double the amount of our costs for making it at home ourselves. Over time, over the year, it does add up, and that's money that you could be spending elsewhere on, saving towards a down payment of a house, investing, all of that stuff. So this is just one area where I've figured out how to cut costs on making bread, but also I just enjoy making it too. It's cool to see the bread rise, which we will go and check out. So here we have the loaf after, so you can see if I take this off here, our dough has maybe tripled in size than what it was when we first left it in there. I'm gonna grab a little bit of flour here, just all-purpose flour. I wouldn't waste bread flour for this part. And we're just gonna sprinkle a little bit on our bread surface here and spread that out. We're not going to touch this too much, but we're going to set it down on top of this flour and form it into a nice ball. Then I'm gonna grab a regular old kitchen knife, something like this, and we're just going to score the top a bit. What I like the best for doing a round loaf like this, and we'll do today, is doing an X shape. So sometimes it can be a little bit difficult, but we're just going to slice in about 1/2 inch to 1 inch, and then this way. And then we will let this loaf sit for another 10 to 20 minutes or so. So while that loaf is just resting, what we're going to do in the meantime is turn on the oven so we can preheat the oven to a good temperature. We are also going to place the cast iron Dutch oven inside of your conventional oven while it's preheating, so that when we place the loaf inside, it will already have a nice, really warm environment to thoroughly cook through the loaf and give it a really nice golden exterior. Setting it at about 375, and I've got an old school oven, so I have to choose either the top or the bottom burner. I suggest if you have one of these to put it on the bottom burner. We're gonna slide our loaf onto this parchment paper. And then we're gonna take this loaf and we're gonna put it into the Dutch oven. And then we're gonna put the lid on the top. Use my gloves because it's hot still. And then we're gonna put the Dutch oven into the oven. We're gonna leave the loaf of bread in the oven for about 30 minutes or so, or until the outer crust is a nice light golden brown. Then we'll pull it out and let it cool for a few minutes before we slice it. Okay, so it's that time. We are going to take the bread out of the oven and see just how delicious it looks with our eyes. Ooh, you see that steam? Look at that nice crust. Let's take it out and put it on the cutting board to let it cool. Melt, baby, melt. So we're gonna give this a good little taste. I've got some butter nicely melting on this freshly baked bread. Let's give it a go. Like, doesn't that look perfect? Anyways, I'm Kilowatt. I hope I've convinced you that making your own bread at home will save you money, it will taste better, and it's enjoyable. And I hope to catch you in the next one. Bye. Bye.